today at the World Health Organization, traditionally the United States has been the #1 funder. Bill Gates and private entities have been very big funders. Communist China hasn't been the biggest funder, but it's like Communist China is the neck. And they're the ones at the WHO that turn the head of Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, the Director General. Dr. Ghebreyesus, with all due respect, has been the toady for the Communist Chinese. Dr. Ghebreyesus is a communist. He's a disgraced former official in Ethiopia, so he was perfect for the Communist Chinese. He was installed as the Director General for the first 5-year term. He was just re-upped this last year for his second 5-year term. So he's there to do the bidding of the Communist Chinese at the WHO. They're having their way. Their system, as Brian well knows, is based upon a social credit score. Their own citizens are tracked and traced and surveilled. That's what this system that was, quote, developed at Brussels, you can know that the Communist Chinese had their hand in it, this digital passport system that about 80 countries in Europe are a part of right now. Now the WHO is taking that on. And that system, again, is all about data collection. The chief data collector of the world is Communist China. So this data will go back to Communist China, and they're the ones that will be calling the shots. And I agree. I think that's a very good way of putting it, that China, as we all know, has had this 100-year plan to be the hegemon in the world, to be the global leader. And I think they are just laughing their heads off at how fast they were able to proceed. They are years ahead of time. And it's because of the government that we have in America, both through prior administration and now through this administration. My speculation, my opinion, I don't have evidence, but it sure looks to me every department in the United States government looks as though it could be being run by the Communist Chinese. No one could get things this wrong so consistently. It's impossible. It defies the odds. So if you would think that you allowed your enemy to essentially bring you down to a point of complete ineffectiveness and then put you in a situation of taking over not only your nation, but then globally with the WHO, it's incredible to me that the United States of America would be the nation that would be at the tip of the spear pushing to empower the WHO after the tragic, disastrous decisions and recommendations they made for the last 3 years. You would never double down and reward the WHO.
No.
That's what's happening.
It's weird. It's incredible.
Amen.
That's exactly where I opened this conversation.
I must be American. Was American. I don't know.
What did you say during the break, Susan? I said you knew it would be the CCP somewhere. She goes, it always is. It always is. And,
anything that doesn't make sense, it has to be communism.
And a couple of things. You've mentioned the word empower a couple of times. How are they empowered to carry this out?
Well, they're empowered by the fact that the United States is gifting to the World Health Organization, as are all other nations, the power to declare. They get to call that.
We are very excited today to be joined by an actress everybody knows, Penelope Ann Miller. She's an award-winning actress, one of the Hollywood legends who's worked with Hollywood legends. When you look at her IMDb, it is extensive. And the new movie is called Reagan. Go to Reagan.movie there it is. It is still in theater. Dennis Quaid obviously playing Reagan and Penelope Ann Miller playing Nancy Reagan. I suggest you go see it, support it. They would like your support. I think you'll enjoy the film, and Penelope will tell you all about it. She's, again, her IMDb list is extensive, but I will tell you what, she and I have a really weird and interesting connection that I have not yet shared with her that I will open with. And then later in the show, Lisa Logan, host of Parents of Patriots, Substack Education Manifesto. She will tell us about Gnostics and their takeover. Watching her videos freaked me out a bit, I got to say. Be back after this with Penelope Ann Miller.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for Christ's sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want to help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
Joint and muscle pains are exhausting and frustrating, but I've got a over-the-counter medication I want to introduce you to that provides great relief using the power of, check it out, chili peppers. Capsidin is made with a proprietary formula that contains no non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents, no opioids, no anesthetic or steroid, nothing, no chance for addiction, no side effects, no chance it's going to interact with other medication you might be taking. Capsidin contains capsaicin, which is the substance in chili peppers that burns your tongue. That gives you that burny feeling. And of course, I've recommended capsaicin creams to patients over the years, but other capsaicin creams burn your skin. That's what makes capsidin so unique. In clinical trials, capsidin has actually been demonstrated not to burn.
I've been using capsidin to relieve my pain in my hands and my wrist from carpal tunnel syndrome and arthritis. The results have been amazing. I use it every day during my show, and I highly recommend it.
Get the pain relief you need from various sources, even backache, sprains, bruises even. Order now at capsidin.com/Drew to get a 15% discount plus free shipping. That is CAPSADYN, capsidin.com/DREW. So Lisa Logan will be here in a few minutes. You can follow her on X at I am Lisa Logan. But now we're going to speak to Penelope Ann Miller, who's also on X at Penelope A. Miller. Reagan.movie is where you can get tickets and find out where the movie is playing. Please welcome Nancy Reagan herself, Penelope Ann Miller.
Hi. Just Nancy Pants. I go by.
All right, Nancy for now. That'll be good enough. So tell us a little bit about the experience and what Dennis Quaid was like and what you thought. And is it from a period of history that you remember, or did you think of fondly? I'm just so curious, what you came to this film with.
Well, I did grow up in the 80s, which I guess that sort of ages me. I wasn't a baby.
I'm right there with you. Right there with you.
So yeah, I grew up in the 80s era, and the Reagans were in the White House for 8 years. And I remember when he was governor. I was pretty young because I live in California, and I actually got a chance to meet him when I was very young because my parents went to some big highfalutin party with the Bloomingdales, and Betsy Bloomingdale was Nancy's best friend. And anyway, so there's a picture of my sister dancing with Ronald Reagan, but didn't know them well. So they're part of our culture. And so I came to this having heard about it through someone, an acquaintance who had mentioned that they were making this film. And the director attached, Sean McNamara, was a director that I'd already worked with. So when I heard about it, this friend said, "You would be great to play Nancy." And I went, "Wow, well that's a thought." Not one that I would originally think that I could do. But then I heard Dennis Quaid became attached, and my agents reached out to Sean. Sean thought it was a great idea. And then I met with him and the producer, and they came to our house and liked the idea, brought it up to Dennis. Dennis liked the idea, and the rest is history, as they say, about a historical power couple, Nancy and Ronnie.
And do you go through, Penelope, is it the whole sweep of their relationship, or just the years in the White House? And does it include like the assassination attempt, those sorts of things?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Actually, the movie opens with the assassination attempt, and then it goes back in time. So you get to know Reagan when he was a younger boy. He had an alcoholic father. There's so much I didn't know, which was wild. And so essentially he was raised by his mother, who was a woman of faith. Then he got into radio broadcasting. Then he moved to California, became an actor, became president of the Screen Actors Guild. And during that time is when he met Nancy Davis, who was an actress as well. And she had she had an issue with her having a few people have her same name, and it was associated with the Communist Party, and she was nervous about that, of being linked to the Communist Party. And Mervyn LeRoy, who was her producer at the time, said, well, I know the president of Screen Actors Guild. You could meet with him and maybe he can help you out. So she went to his office and met him, and
Wow.
and then it started dating like that night. But she was already very much crushing on him. She was obviously aware of him. He was a pretty well-known actor at the time. He'd been married beforehand, and that was a pretty bad breakup to the actress that, you know, he was married. It was kind of devastating. Yeah, Jane Wyman.
Yeah.
And they had two
Jane
children.
Wyman, yeah.
Lost a child, and that would traumatized him. I think that breakup really made him very, very gun shy about getting seriously involved again, because he felt like you only marry once, and that was sort of the faith he came from, and didn't trust that he could have a marriage like the one he did with Nancy. I think it took him longer to realize that Nancy was his gal and a soulmate, because ever since then, when it finally hit and then they married, I mean, he wrote her a love note every day. So yes, to answer your question in a very long-winded way, it goes from the beginning of their relationship all the way up to when he is afflicted with Alzheimer's. So it doesn't go up to his death, but the credits, you have to stay through the credits because it's incredibly moving, because that shows real life footage, and it shows I don't want to spoil it, but the funeral, and you see Nancy, and it's really, really moving. People at the end of the movie are bawling their eyes out. The emotional reaction that we've had on this film has been nothing I've ever experienced. Nothing. I feel it's triggered a nerve in our country.
They weren't crying at the end of Kindergarten Cop? No? No tears? no tears?
No.
No, but I could...
Yeah. Maybe Carlito's right.
But I can imagine.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. Not only is their story quite intense and moving, but I come across all the time very intense nostalgia these days. If people are old enough for the 80s, and for the slightly younger crowd, the 90s. And because I was on TV during the 90s, I get a lot of that. Like, oh, why aren't you doing that again? I have to say to people, no. You don't want me to do that. You want the 90s back. You want me at age 35 doing what I was doing in the 90s. You want the whole thing back.
Exactly. I think that's what people are nostalgic about. They miss those days. They even if they're younger and they didn't know the Reagans, like sort of we experienced them as a culture. People are like, oh, that's what we had. That was what America was like. And of course there was controversy then. And of course there was, people who said things targeted, Nancy and Ronnie, and who Nancy called Ronnie. But there were those that it was nothing like it is today. And the climate was so incredibly different, because I remember when I was young, my parents were very liberal Democrats, and they would go to parties with Republicans, and there wasn't such divisiveness. It didn't separate people and polarize them like it does now.
Not at all.
It was a different America.
Not at all.
We're much more patriotic, and yeah.
Another chapter about Reagan. He was what did he do? He lectured for GE or something. There was, before he became the Screen Actors.
Yeah, his career
what was that?
started taking a nosedive, and then General Electric asked him to be one of the spokesperson to go around the country, which is actually kind of what led him into the more political side of his life. Which Jane Wyman, by the way, his first wife, did not like him getting political at all, was so upset about this whole Screen Actors thing. And the communists, were trying to infiltrate then as well, and the mafia and everything in Hollywood. So he was fighting that. And I think what happened was, once he started meeting with people around the country, the everyday person, he realized maybe I can help. And actually started seeing this as sort of a calling in a way. Nancy would do some of the commercials with them. Their house was completely filled with everything General Electric. Didn't have any money. That was how they made their income. But I think Nancy really believed in him. She was sort of that person. I mean, even Ron Jr. says, my dad would never have been president of the United States if it wasn't for my mom. And I think because of her belief in his higher purpose or his greater purpose, that fueled him with that kind of confidence to become what he became. And he was also a Democrat for 40 years too. She didn't change his, decide, okay, you're a Republican now. But the party left him, I guess. But it's fascinating, actually, because that the stigma of a woman being behind a man, or that she was manipulative. I mean, she was called the Dragon Lady and all this stuff, and that she was very cold and manipulative. I didn't find that at all. I read her memoir. I read many books. I talked to her press secretary. Did a ton of research. I found that the people that worked with her really, really respected her and admired her. And didn't, they were just so closely knit. They were such a tight couple that she was the one person I think that he trusted and felt that she had his back and that he could confide in. And I think that was a really important relationship. And it's the heart of the film. It's really, the love story is the heart of the film. And I think that's why people care at the end as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And Nancy was, just such an interesting, iconic, and controversial at times, but an important figure that sometimes doesn't get her due. And I was thinking back to him with his GE presentations. My understanding is that's where he had this Lincoln-esque way of telling stories all the time and telling jokes, and always had them ready to hand. And I think I was led to believe a long time ago that his presentations on behalf of GE is where he sort of crafted that. We'd have to get up and tell stories and entertain an audience and things.
I'm sure acting didn't hurt either. He says to be a good president, you kind of have to be a good actor. Not that he was lying or making up things. I think he just knew he had that way. They called him the great communicator. He knew how to disarm people. He always opened things with a joke. He brought you in. And I think he seemed like an approachable. She didn't so much, because I think she was so protective of him. And especially, it was 2 months into the White House years that he got the attempted assassination. So of course that was so frightening. And I think she became just incredibly, protective and wary of everyone around him. But yeah, he was very likable. He was a very charming, likable guy. Yeah.
You can see it now when you look at the footage, and the jokes were kind of good too. They were funny.
Yeah,
but Susan, you're gonna love this. Susan, are you aware that Nancy Reagan was?
Yeah, she loved psychics.
She loved psychics.
And also, I remember my parents voted for him when he ran for governor. I'm older than you.
So it was.
I have a cup. I have the vote for Reagan cup in my house.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Oh, actually,
and it's like a little plastic one with a picture inside. Is it one
glass.
Of those?
Yeah. No, it's glass.
You got a fancy one. You got a fancy.
It was a gift. But it was astrology. That was her thing. It was more than it wasn't psychic. It was astrology. So she had this astrologer, and after the attempted assassination, she got heavily into astrology, because I think that was her way of trying to, you try and have some control of the situation. So you're thinking, don't fly at this time and don't show up at this time. So she would go to her astrologer to ask for advice, and it drove, Secret Services like crazy, because he kept changing. And I guess he listened to her. She was like, you can't go now. You have to go later, or you have to move this date to that date, or whatever it was. But the interesting thing, though, is about Mary Todd Lincoln, who I also played. She had there was many assassination attempts on Lincoln, but also she lost 3 of her sons. She had melancholy, and she, really went through a lot. And, but she had seances, and that was her way of dealing with, I think, her grief and dealing with all of the fear that she had. And it's interesting, those parallels between those two, I find, with that.
Yeah, I mean, you could imagine, right? I mean, and Mary ended up in a psychiatric hospital. Frank put her in at the end there after Abraham Lincoln's assassination. And she very much, she dragged Abraham into a few seances too, and he just sort of go along with it. But you can imagine the how scary it is. I mean, you're at the top of this pyramid, and there's a civil war going on, or in Reagan's case, a Cold War going on, and assassination attempts. And how do you manage your fear? Is really what the women were doing, trying to manage this. And you're right. I think seeking some sort of control almost isn't the right word. Some sort of way of
coping or some sort of.
Well, it's kind of like creating order in chaos, it's coping. It's all those things you've said, but it's like, if I could just hang on to something, I'll hang on to this astrology, and that will give me sort of a structure to move forward in a way that feels a little better in this out of control situation.
Yeah, a sense of comfort, a false maybe sense of comfort, but a sense of like, I know what's going to happen here, or if I do know what's going to happen, or if I've been told, that this is the way it's going to, I might be able to rest easy a little bit.
It's desperation. And if it works, and if it works for them, good for them. I say good. I mean, my God, the stuff they were dealing with. So, Penelope, what is I was trying to remember what was the first film that really broke you onto the scene. It wasn't, what would it be? Because I looked at your IMDb, it just goes on. You just have you've done so much stuff. And I felt like it didn't go all the way back, actually. I think I knew her. I remember seeing her when I was younger. When I was younger, what would you consider the first really big break for you?
I didn't really start acting. My big break really was on Broadway. It was in Biloxi Blues, the Neil Simon trilogy with Matthew Broderick. Matthew was becoming a big movie star from War Games, and then he went on to do Ferris Bueller. But that movie, doing that play on Broadway, I think opened me up to many casting directors and people thinking, oh, she's a legitimate actress. Being that I moved to New York, even though I'm from LA, a lot of people didn't even know I was from LA. But luckily, I was able to do the movie of Biloxi Blues. I don't know that was my breakthrough role. It was Mac Nichols, and I had to audition all over again. And there was only 3 people along with Matthew that were in the original cast. So there was that. I would think maybe Kindergarten Cop, because it was such a big hit. But I think I'd done Awakenings before that, and maybe The Freshman. Yeah, I'd done Awakenings and The Freshman prior to that. So it's hard to say really which one it was, but I remember thinking, oh, I'm going to go from Brando to De Niro to Schwarzenegger.
Right. Wild, right?
I don't know.
And I remember, so my memory is by the time you got to Kindergarten Cop, I felt like I already knew you. Like I know who Penelope Ann Miller is, and I'm a fan, kind of thing. And it's weird that that's my recollection. And maybe it was Biloxi Blues. It might have been that.
No, you know what? Maybe it was Adventures in Babysitting. Did you see that movie with Elizabeth Shue?
Maybe, yeah. Maybe.
That was my first movie. That was, and
hard
I played
to put it all together.
Yeah, it is hard for me.
But I want to. We have a stranger connection that I want to tell you about.
Okay.
That goes even further back. Okay, you ready? So your dad, Mark Miller, was also an actor, and he was in a TV show also fashioned after a movie called Please Don't Eat the Daisies, right? Yes? Am I right so far? Okay.
Okay, you're on.
And I as a kid, I was a fan of that show, but one of the things that kept happening is my mother would go, oh, Shirley Mitchell, she was my friend. And my dad would go, oh, her husband is Dr. Frieden, a general surgeon I work with. And I ended up meeting them both. And Julian Frieden is a legendary surgeon. His name is all over all the Cedars-Sinai buildings, at least the original ones, back, in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But weird that I knew and met Shirley Mitchell and Julian Frieden, and my parents were friends of theirs. Isn't that weird?
Wow, that's wild.
Isn't that a connection?
Very.
Right? Because that's my mom. So my mother was an actress too. And
really?
Put Shirley Mitchell up there.
Yeah. Dark glasses. Oh, she was quite something.
I don't know how she knew Shirley, because she was also a woman of many. She was also a woman of many secrets, and so I don't know how she knew Shirley. What's that? Shirley Mitchell.
What's Shirley's name?
Right? Is that her name? Shirley Mitchell? Am I getting
Shirley
that right?
Mitchell. Oh, it's
Penelope? The neighbor in Please Don't Eat the Daisies?
I don't remember the
Do you
neighbor's
remember her?
name. I remember they were Ted
Okay.
and something Nash. But their neighbors were funny. And they remember one of them always came through the window. One of the neighbors.
Something like that. Yes. I'm looking at her.
Yeah. But that's wild.
Look
though.
up Helene Stanton, and
No,
you'll
he put
find
it up. He put
Drew's
it up.
mother.
He put it up there.
You can
I
see
saw
her
it.
whole
Yeah.
bio.
Yeah, she saw it.
She was married to the first.
Uh-oh. My lights just went out.
It's a ghost. She doesn't want us to say this, but she was
Blackout.
married to the first silent film star.
No, one of the early
this is
Western
Shirley,
film stars.
So
Yeah, there's
great.
Shirley.
Shirley Mitchell.
Wow.
Yeah, that's Shirley in much later years.
You have your-
What happened to Shirley Mitchell? Anyway, this is odd. We're going down a weird path here. We'll leave it at that. Let's go back to the film and back to the Reagans, because I have a similar, a sort of funny and nostalgic feeling about the 80s to what I'm encountering so many people talking about the 90s with that feeling these days. But I definitely have it about the 80s. And I'm always I remember one of the things people forget about Ronald Reagan is that he was a very controversial figure when he came to the presidency. I remember people really not liking him, and people forget that. Is that portrayed in the film?
Not so
Uh-oh.
much.
I think I
but
lost Penelope's sound. Hang on a sec. I lost your sound. Is that at your end, or Caleb? Is that at yours?
She's
or
still
is that
here.
just my?
I can still
Your
hear you.
mother's
Penelope. One
working
second.
her evil ways.
Oh yeah.
Drew, can you hear us
Hold on.
now?
He's
She
going
didn't
through the
want
system.
us
He'll
to
get you
hear.
hooked back up again. Hold on a second.
I can hear you all. I can hear you guys really well.
General surgeon in Los Angeles for years, and I was Shirley's husband. That's sort of my
You just looked it up.
connection with those people.
Hi, are you
No,
Drew,
I
can you hear
remember
us
them.
now?
I remember them, and I still don't have.
Yeah, I
Penelope
hear
yet.
you,
Hold
Penelope.
on.
You're fine.
Caleb, is there anything you need us
Something
to do
might be
at this
disconnected
end?
on Drew's side.
It is.
can't
It
hear
is
us.
definitely Ghost for sure.
Your mother is-
It's confirmed. It is Ghost.
or it's Frieden.
And maybe no, Dr. Frieden. I don't know if Caleb, if they can hear Penelope, I can always let her talk.
I can't hear Caleb.
No, I can't hear that either.
I'm
Is it
talking.
maybe something on our? Oh wait, he's texting us. Let's see what he wants us to do. Give us 1 second.
Do we have to restart something?
Oh, they can
I
hear
think talking
Penelope.
about the
We hear you, we
seances.
see you, we can hear you. Penelope, too. We can't hear you.
We
so-
just can't hear anything at that end.
Okay.
What would that
I'm gonna
be?
go ahead. Actually, Penelope, what I'll do while I have this lined up,
Yeah,
I'm gonna
maybe
play a
give us
clip
1
from
second
the
to-
show,
Great.
and we'll
That's a
promote
great
it with
Sure,
that.
everything's
We'll
plugged
be right
in.
back in just a second.
Okay.
Are you listening to this? We are the greatest country in the world, and we have just forgotten it.
Like I didn't see this coming. It's okay to say it, Ronnie.
Okay, I'll say it. I want to run again. What do you think about that?
If I can do it all again. The public scrutiny, the attacks on your character, all the lies. But mainly, I want you to be happy.
Well, you already made me the happiest man in the world.
I've had to share you my whole life. But that's what I signed up for. And who I fell in love with. It's not over for you, Ronnie. You know what you have to do. And this time,
Win
win
it.
it.
Can I be heard?
Yes, we can all hear you. It's Drew that on their side.
Me? That's so sad. What happened?
He's sometimes they're in New York. Drew, can you talk? Unmute your mics, Drew. Actually, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go ahead.
Okay.
We're gonna go to commercial really quickly, and then we'll come back and we'll be back with you on the show. That was a really great clip. We'll be right back.
Oh, cool. Okay, thanks.
I'm excited to bring you a new product, a new supplement, Fatty. I take it. I make Susan take it. My whole family takes it. This comes out of, believe it or not, dolphin research. The Navy maintains a fleet of dolphins. And a brilliant veterinarian recognized that these dolphins sometimes developed a syndrome identical to our Alzheimer's disease. Those dolphins were deficient in a particular fatty acid. She replaced the fatty acid, and they didn't get the Alzheimer's. Humans have the same issue, and we are more deficient in this particular fatty acid than ever before. And a simple replacement of this fatty acid called C15 will help us prevent these syndromes. It's published in a recent journal called Metabolites. It's a new nutritional C15, pentadecanoic acid it's called. The deficiency that we are developing for C15 creates something called the cellular fragility syndrome. This is the first nutritional deficiency syndrome to be discovered in 75 years and may be affecting us in many ways, and as many as 1 in 3 of us. This is an important breakthrough. Take advantage of it. Go to fatty15.com/Dr. Drew to receive 15% off a 90-day starter kit subscription, or use code Dr. Drew at checkout for that 15% off, or just go to our website, drdrew.com/fatty15. Many of us have not gotten over COVID. I'm not talking about the virus itself, but the response. We were flabbergasted by what the government could do to us. There is no telling what they might pull next time, and it's looking more like there will be a next time. So we all have to be what I call rationally ready. That's where the wellness company comes in. TWC is about access to physicians via telehealth, access to potentially life-saving medication. Years ago, having access to medication and telehealth might have seemed crazy, but now it seems crazy not to. Now, with claims that gain-of-function research have been done on the bird flu, I urge everyone to take control of their healthcare with the help of the wellness company. Go to drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off all their products, including the 4 medical kits, each of which has a different purpose. And we've added Tamiflu to one of them in case the bird flu does become a problem for humans. Be rationally ready. drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off.
Now, if you want to see stars, you have to watch them dance, dive, or go to rehab with Dr. Drew.
Dr. Pinsky told me that you are having some issues.
He says I'm depressed.
Are you?
Dr. Drew.
I believe you got me back here. Is that right, Caleb? Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. All good.
All right, great. I want to tell you about our friends at Paleo Valley before I bring my friend, Penelope Ann Miller, back in here. Of course, venison sticks, which I love. That is the venison sticks, 50 calories each, one of the most nutrient-dense meats available, 7 grams of lean protein, essential amino acids, all carefully sourced. You know these guys do it the best. Iron, it's very easily absorbed by the body. It's full of zinc, antioxidants, selenium, more omega-3 fatty acids than some of their counterparts. Of course, the beef sticks, also from grass-fed finished beef. I think you're looking at the bone broth there on that particular picture.
Oh yeah, that might actually be the bone broth. Oops.
That's fine. I will tell you that the chocolate is 80 calories. It's the one we like. It comes in unflavored and vanilla as well. And again, the beef sticks have elevated levels of antioxidants, glutathione, conjugated linoleic acid. Check them all out. Many varieties, many flavors. It's drdrew.com/Paleo Valley. You'll get 15% off your first order there. drdrew.com/Paleo Valley, or better yet, subscribe to save 20% so you don't run out. PaleoValley.com, our friends, drdrew.com/Paleo Valley is where you can get all that. Or is it PaleoValley.com/Dr. Drew? I think I saw both up there. Help me, Susan.
Either
or.
Both of them probably work. Yeah.
You can pretty much just go to drdrew.com/sponsors and find all the great products that we have sponsoring the show.
Penelope is at Penelope A. Miller on X. Reagan.movie is where you can watch it. And when you weren't able to hear me, what I was saying was I can see why people get so wistful and teary at the end of this. You guys do such a great job of bringing those two back to life. It really is a little bit, kind of chokes me up a little bit to watch it.
Yeah, it's had that effect on people, and I can't wait for you to see it. Hopefully you'll see it while it's still in the theaters, because that's the best way to see it, and also seeing it with an audience, seeing their reaction and seeing how emotional people get. We've gotten, spontaneous applause at the end of the movie that we're not even that. We just hear it all the time. And I just, we have a 98% audience approval, and we have a cinema score of A. And we're doing really well, considering, it's a smaller independent film and doesn't have the big studios behind it. But I think the word of mouth has been pretty amazing. So people like you and your audience, that go out and support it and talk about it, that's what we need to keep us up there. And I just think it's a human story. It's about history, but it's character driven, and it's different than other movies out there. So I think it really has something, and I think it brings people back to a time that they wish they were in, and
Right.
hopefully inspires them. It gives us maybe some hope, which we need right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I remember coming out of the 70s, that was not exactly a hopeful time either. And I just recently met the guy, he does now the Uncommon Knowledge podcast, that wrote the speech where Reagan says, Mr. Gorbachev, take down this wall. And he was telling me how the staffers didn't want him to have that speech. They didn't want him to say those words in particular.
Right.
And
that's in the movie, by the way.
Reagan insisted upon it. He insisted upon that. And sort of, I heard some story about him having kind of stolen a manuscript, so he had the original in hand that included that quote. I don't know if that's apocryphal or not, but he really felt strongly about saying that, and how wild that became, one of these iconic moments in history.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody kind of remembers, Gorbachev tear down this wall. And that was an incredible time in our history, and just ending the Cold War was a big deal. And, the ending of wars. And he said, it's peace through strength, and I'm going to, fight, but no one's going to get hurt. I'm not going to, it's not going to be, it's a better quote than that, but he said, he was about that. And I think, we also need that right now too.
Well, it's funny though. I'm remembering now, as I think about this, that right when he was elected, if you recall, people were so convinced that he was a warmonger and that he was going to cause a nuclear exchange, that we all had to, the country, something like 50 million people sat down and watched a movie called The Morning After, or The Day After, with Jason Robards. You remember that film? About a nuclear exchange. And we all were like, we got to get ready because Reagan's going to cause a nuclear war. And even in the film, literally the day after, they have an actor pretending to be Reagan, his voice, sort of a voice actor, talking to the people that survived very coldly, like, well, we had to do this and we knew it would happen. And, we got to rebuild now with the people that survive. It's no big deal, or something like that, something super crazy. And we all sat and watched that damn film. And you see what the propaganda can do to us, is my point.
It was good birth control.
And it wasn't as propagandistic then as it is today. So be careful, everybody. Consume your media wisely.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of fear-mongering.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Richard Rodriguez on Restream said, didn't he coin the phrase, make America great again?
Reagan? I don't think so.
I think I saw that.
No, it was.
What?
He says, we will make America great. There was even little pins and not a hat like Trump had, but he did coin that phrase. That was Reagan.
Interesting.
I know, right?
I remember he talked about bringing America back, sort of thing. But he was really talking about the economy, it seemed like to me at the time. Yeah. Let's not also not forget that he had to do crazy things with the rates, with the treasury rates and things. They had to go up with like 18% and to squash what had been 10 years of terrible inflation. There's a lot going on back then. Right. We forget.
There was a lot. Yeah. And I think people kind of made fun and didn't take him seriously because he was an actor. And but even though he'd been governor, I just think they they were nervous about that, about whether or not he was up to the task. But I think, he was elected twice. So there was, I guess, reason for people wanting him to stick around, even though at that time, he was in his 70s and that was considered old. So, but yeah, it was, I think the film really has something for everyone. It doesn't matter what political persuasion you are. I think whether you're, both sides of the aisle, in between, I really do. I have so many friends on both sides, and I feel like they love the movie. And I feel like when people go to the movie, I think it really has a great effect on it. And I think it's a combination of the nostalgia, or what could have been, or what once was that can be, and also the love story. I think people love seeing the human side of these people who were these iconic, well-known people that nobody knew what was behind the scenes. I think seeing the relationships is also really interesting. And his past, like I said, I mean, wondering what maybe having an alcoholic father, and you probably would be able to analyze this best, but how did that propel him forward? Why did he think that he had something to do, or he had to take care of people, or you know what I mean? And then that just grew from there.
Yeah, I mean, having a traumatic childhood sort of kind of goes one way or the other. And obviously his went in a more positive direction in terms of what he was able to do for others. Who knows what he suffered as a result. But listen, Penelope, I appreciate you being here. Other than going to this film and watching it in the theaters, any place else we should look for you coming up soon?
I have a couple independent movies that we're waiting on getting released, so I don't know the dates yet. And then I have a couple projects that I'm waiting to start, but they kept getting pushed around. It's a crazy time in our world, obviously, but also in this business. And obviously a lot going down in this business, as we've heard. But I'm hopeful that there's some great projects that I'm attached to that will get made, and hopefully the films that I have done will come out. So nothing specific to name at this juncture, but maybe next time I'll come on and be able to promote something else.
I would love that very much. That would be terrific. Susan, anything you were trying to say something there? No? Okay. Penelope Ann Miller, everybody, follow her on Penelope A. Miller on X. Go to Reagan.movie. Go see the film. Support these guys. Dennis Quaid is another great guy, and support him as well. And you can see,
wonderful.
You'll see why people are having such a tremendous reaction to this film. I'm not surprised at all. Just watching that couple minutes there really kind of lets you into the intensity of what those lives were and what they went through. So, and it's a piece of our history as a people.
Yeah, it is. It's a piece of our history, and hopefully it's entertaining too. And it was very challenging for both Dennis and I. And Dennis does an amazing job playing Reagan, and people just say they can't see the difference after a while. They just fall into it. And it was pretty daunting for me to play Nancy, of course, but hope people are responding really well. And I appreciate you having me on. And thank you so much. Oh, and I'm Penelope Ann Miller on Instagram too. So.
Oh, great. Okay, go follow her there. Follow her all these places, and we will hopefully talk to you again soon.
All right, Dr.
Great to see you.
Lovely to meet you. I really appreciate it.
You as well.
Okay,
Thank you so
bye.
much.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.
All right, we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to talk to Lisa Logan. Let me get you some of the particulars about Lisa. You can follow her on X as I am Lisa Logan. Also, Parents of Patriots YouTube channel. Before I bring Lisa in, well, let's bring Lisa in. I do want to go over upcoming guests. We got a pretty exciting lineup still, but Lisa's part of that. So, hey, Lisa, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So talk to me, I almost don't know where to start. Talk to me about two things, your YouTube channel and what people can expect to find there, and what you're talking about with the Gnostic takeover.
Yeah, well, I started my YouTube channel because as I started studying this program that was being put in schools, social emotional learning, and the funding behind it and the ideology behind it, I realized that not a lot of parents understood because of the fact that they use such kind of nice language, like why would you want to be against teaching kids social and emotional skills, right?
Right.
I feel like I needed to break it down, and there needed to be a place where parents could go and understand that their children were being indoctrinated into critical theories at school. And, that's where I started, Dr. Drew, but, it just kind of became more and more horrific.
Lisa,
Yeah.
in one of, did I lose you again? Can you hear me okay, Lisa?
I can hear you.
We disconnected. I saw that it came off the...
We can hear you, Drew, and we see you.
Can you hear me, Caleb?
Yes. I'm just assuming someone must be tripping over the camera cord.
Essentially, it's something to do with the connection there. Caleb, can we restart things again? There we go. Hold on 1 second. We don't normally have this problem, but we're on the road here. I don't think people can hear me.
I can hear you, but...
1 second.
There you are, Drew.
I know, but the connection said it went out. The connection's out.
It's
you guys
so
hear me
weird
now?
because we can hear and
yes,
see you.
No. Mm-hmm. I know it's the Ethernet. Yeah. There you
Drew,
go.
can you hear us now?
1 second.
You're still there. Oh, but you can't even hear me. 1 second. I'm gonna have to pull up my tech difficulty screen. 1 second.
All right, I think
How's
we're
that?
back. Lisa, you got me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, now I don't have Lisa again.
I hear
So
she's
sorry
right
about
here. I
this,
hear
because
her.
what I want to talk about. I think you hear me, and I think other people hear me too. But what I want to when we get your sound back, so I can hear you, the connection of who is behind all this. I watched a lengthy video that you put out, where you were connecting a lot of dots with some organizations that were gravely concerning, and had little or nothing to do with education necessarily, but were certainly part of this sort of general, massive, I think it's something you've characterized as Gnostic takeover. But hang on here 1 second. Let's see if we can get you back.
Can you hear us now,
Is she
Drew?
back? I hear you. Okay.
Yeah.
Lisa, you with me?
Yeah. Someone must have tripped on the
I
cable?
can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay,
Yeah, we
perfect.
hear you.
Yep. So go. I know you've got a lot to say on what I set up there, so have at it.
Right. Well, at first, if the fact that they weren't teaching kids critical theories like critical race theory and critical queer theory at school wasn't bad enough, what I discovered was even more horrific. And I believe you're referring to my Evolutionary Leaders video. And really, this is the cult behind the culture shifts. And they are pushing a particular ideology at school, in business, in government. They have 21 synergy circles. They've literally infiltrated every sector, every culture-producing sector of our society to push this very Gnostic, one world, all is one, what I call a cosmological monism worldview. So this whole idea that maybe we all originated from the same point in space, and if we all came from the same stardust, then we have to care about what happens to people on the other side of the world, to the point where we have to give up our national sovereignty, our individual rights and freedoms. And this is the same group that's behind the Summit of the Future's outcome document, the Pact for the Future, that just came out this last weekend.
And yeah, this is the United Nations thing, right? Which I've read. It is ridiculously, extensively comprehensive, and is setting goals for itself that are literally, I don't want to say nonsensical because they make sense. They just are not connected to reality. Like, we're going to get rid of world poverty, period, end of story. Okay, done and done. And while we do that, we will solve the climate problem. And while we do that, we're going to end disease. And I'm just like, oh my God, what is this? It's some sort of fantasy program. But what's clear, and this is the part I kind of want to talk to you about, is that there's this overwhelming enthusiasm for centralized planning and centralized authority. And this, in addition to protecting free speech, I'm sort of zeroing in as our major problem, which is people that want to take care of their immediate surroundings, their family, their community, their economic circumstances, and people who will have none of that, who want to be in control of every aspect of your life because they know better. It is such a bizarre and difficult for me to understand impulse to want. All you have to do is study history for 5 minutes and you see the outcome of centralized authority, wherever it has occurred throughout the human experience. And this time it will be different is not an acceptable phrase. So how do we combat this?
I think we have to point out what this is. The reason it's nonsensical, Dr. Drew, is because this is a cult. I mean, I don't know of any cult I can look at in history that have kind of made sense. I mean, you look at Jonestown, those people believed so much in what they were doing that they drank poison Kool-Aid and died. And that's really the only thing I can say is that why people don't understand what this woke mind virus really is, right? What Elon terms as the woke mind virus is it's religious. They literally believe that if we don't all come to this global consciousness of what this reality they feel is, that we're all interconnected and interdependent, that we're literally going to not evolve as a species and that our species is going to die out. So when you think about the fanaticism behind this, it then makes sense, right? They need to control everybody. They need to get everybody to this sense of global consciousness, this whole idea that all is one and that we all need to give up whatever we have to benefit someone else. And they need that in order to help our civilization survive. And so this is why this is happening at scale, especially with the United Nations.
But Lisa, I can even sign up for the we're all interconnected. There's give me a global consciousness, if you will. That doesn't mean I think the best way to serve the needs of that interconnected humanity is to put some people in charge of everybody, or to put a bureaucracy of all things in place, a gigantic bureaucracy. This is utopianism. This is Jacobinism. This has been around for a long time, and it always goes bad. Have we not learned? Did you not learn during COVID that give people some authority, they will take it and they will abuse it? Not every state did, not every country did, but a lot of them ran to do so. And God help you if you ran afoul of their plans. This is not good. Do you have a way? I mean, I imagine, Lisa, it's easy for you to communicate with, persuade your enthusiastic fans, but how do you address people who think this is a good idea all of a sudden? Do you say, read your Russian history? Do you read your Chinese history? Read your French history? I just read any history about anywhere in humanity where this has happened. It's so vivid for me. I have to tell you, it's so vivid for me because it is the way medicine has been adulterated too. The best, the most effective unit in medicine is a well-trained, caring physician and an informed, motivated patient. That is your best unit. Nothing is more efficient than that. Nothing is better than that. Nothing makes better outcomes than that. Nothing's better than that for everybody. Nothing's less expensive than that. And yet they insist on intruding into it and putting all these systems upon it. And we see what happens. Look at this country. We're spending more money than anyone on earth, and we have less good health. We have worse health than anywhere on earth. Do you want that in our political realm as all? And do you want it to have no options where you can't go anywhere in the globe without being consumed by this centralized phenomenon? It's just too much for me. It's so obviously hideous.
Yeah, well, and I think that you really hit the nail on the head there. I think the reason that people don't see this centralization of power is dangerous because they don't understand what the motivations behind the United Nations are, and then how that differs very, very much so from what our founding fathers envisioned with our U.S. Constitution and Bill of Rights.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and so people need to understand their history and what that means for them, because
Yes.
our Constitution says that our rights come from God. And really, you know, when our nation started, we were a pluralistic nation. We had a bunch of beliefs about, you know, religion and what our purpose in life was and meaning and all of that. And how do you then have a culture survive where you're not at war? You help those people feel represented in government and know that that government document that you put in place protects their rights to freedom of religion, whether that be in public or in private. And then their representatives, you know, say, hey, you know, government, you can't infringe on these rights. Whereas the United Nations, they believe they are God. You don't have any rights that don't go along with their United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. They even say that in their declaration on human rights, is that basically your rights come null and void if it affects the whole. And so obviously nothing you're ever going to do is not going to affect somebody in some way, shape, or form, and they can use that lever as a way to put in their totalitarian control.
How do we get people to understand what's going on, other than obviously the material you're putting out? And are there other solutions? Is the spiritual vacuum the problem here? Is this on some level a good versus bad struggle? Do people understand it on that level? Would that reach them more effectively? I mean, what do people need to do?
I think first they need to understand that even though it looks like a political problem, it is really a religious problem. That we have a religion that's been basically instituted as a state-sanctioned religion. If you probably watched my video on the evolutionary leaders, you know that these people were heavily promoted for decades on Oprah's show. So this ideology was never, you know, the millions of housewives were watching her show every day, was never presented as, hey, guess what? This is new thought ideology that we're just pushing onto you as fact. And so all of these people bought into this mindset. And now all of a sudden you have all these people with their 21 synergy circles affecting how business does business based on stakeholder capitalism. You have communism being pushed upon our society. You know, you have open borders, you have all these things. And if people understand that this is literally the ideology behind all of it, it's behind the Who's One Health agenda. If you believe that your rights aren't any better than the insects or the biospheres or whatever, they're going to say, well, yeah, that means you need to sacrifice, you need to give up your fossil fuels, you need to you need to do all these things for the common good. And so I think if people understand that it's literally the ideology behind everything, and educate themselves on what that is, hopefully they'll see that, hey, we need to hold on to our national sovereignty. How do we do that? We pull the U.S. out of the UN. It's really what the solution is. They are not the peaceful and good-meaning organization that a lot of people think they are.
Are you surprised that you've ended in this place? Is this, you know, really not where you imagined you'd be at this point in your life?
100%, Dr. Drew, but it's funny. I say this, you know, I actually belonged to a cult for 7 years of my life, from about the time I was 16 to 23. So when I came across this program, my alarm bells were going off. And I never expected, and I kind of, you know, my past in a cult was something that I kind of never really dealt with. Very much, I kind of left it behind me. And now with me discovering this cult, I was like, no wonder, you know, like my experience in what I, you know, lived through my own life and watching what it means to be brainwashed and the methodology that's used and the techniques and the mindset. I recognized this right away for what it was. And yes, I did not expect to find a cult at the bottom of this rabbit hole, but here I am. And I've just been trying to sound the alarm bell, because I think people need to understand what they're seeing in society right now is not just about culture. This is literally a religion being forced upon them.
Can you sort of lay bare or bring to consciousness for people some of the brainwashing techniques that you're seeing?
Yes, well, I'll start with the program that I exposed in schools, which is called social emotional learning. And one of the things that cults do is they kind of put you in a vulnerable position. The cult that I belong to, the International Church of Christ, they do a thing called a sin study. And you basically have to confess all of the terrible things that you've done to people you may have only known for a few months once they studied the Bible with you. And so that puts you in a very vulnerable position. And they say, you know how you can be, redeemed? How you can redeem yourself? You can become a part of our church and evangelize and tell more people they need to come to this cult. And they do a similar thing with social emotional learning, where they have these circle times at the very beginning of their session with social emotional learning. And I remember a mom of a fourth grader came to me and told me her kid's story, that there was a group next to her child's group. They started with an opening question, like, what makes you sad? That could be a whole can of worms, right? Depending on, how the kid answers it. It could be like, well, I'm sad when Susie's mad at me on the playground and she treats me badly too. I had a fish die, I had a grandparent die. This kid opened up with, my parents are separated, and now my mom's drinking and seeing other people. Now, as you know, doctors, vulnerability breeds vulnerability. And by the end of this circle time, these kids were sharing very, very vulnerable things. All of them were in tears. They were completely disordered. And then now circle time was over, and the teacher didn't know what to do. She's a math teacher, because you can literally teach social emotional learning in every class, and she's not a trained psychologist. She said something like, well, I'm sorry, Jimmy, you're going through that, but, we have to get back to math. And this kid now for the rest of the day is not going to be able to learn, right? But it primes children to put them in a mindset to be indoctrinated with other ideologies like critical theory, critical race theory, critical queer theory, anything, that helps them feel a sense of belonging now to the group, right? Now they've trauma bonded with their group. Now you can introduce all sorts of things to the children. And so really that is a cult strategy right there. And then obviously in a lot of these things and in the program that I expose, they're teaching them that, other generations don't understand what you're going through. They don't get, maybe the struggles, and they show like a BLM march in the video. You don't get some of the struggles and how you're feeling about what's going on around you. They show a prayer vigil for a school shooting. But they're saying, but you can solve all these problems through social emotional learning. So again, they're dividing the line between, your parents, which is actually the thing that makes kids feel the most stable, right? Their cultural and familial beliefs and what they grow up in and their sense of belonging with their families. And now they're trying to create division in that line there. And so you see, that can be very disordering for children. That can create a mental health crisis. So I often wonder, this mental health crisis that they're solving with social emotional learning, was it caused by social emotional learning? And a lot of these programs that are creating that division for those kids.
And you talked about 21 synergy circles. What is that?
So that the evolutionary leaders, that cult I just told you about, they have little subcommittees that they've sent out into the UN, into business. I can tell you the World Business Academy is part of this. I can tell you there's an education one that I've exposed. They're trying to put now spirituality in social emotional learning. Well, wouldn't you know it, one of those guys who's behind the Question Project, who's a part of that, is an evolutionary leader. So I'm just seeing the same slime under every rock, and it all leads back to this cult.
And is there sort of a primary funding of this cult, or some, the cults usually have a charismatic leader. Is there something like that going on here?
Well, one of the most well-known, doctors who's been on Oprah, Dr. Deepak Chopra, is one of the leaders. We had Barbara Marx Hubbard, who was a part of the evolutionary leaders. She ran and got to speak at the convention, I think in the 80s. She was a vice presidential candidate. We have Marianne Williamson, who just ran for president for a second time. These are not fringe people. And I think that's the difference. We talk about cults, the Branch Davidians and all these other people, and they were considered fringe by our society. This one's been mainstreamed. This one's been normalized. Their ideas has infiltrated our culture. And many people have no clue that it's even happening.
Is it possible it is just cult-esque in the sense that these propagandistic techniques are effective? They happen to kind of, because they're not mental health people, they fell into these techniques, well-meaning fell into them, and are using them to their advantage for these, again, the cultural, philosophical positions that they maintain, that this thing sort of spontaneously evolved, that it's not some sort of cultish mastermind. And I've noticed that about cults sometimes too. People that form cults sometimes do so with great intent and they intend to do something good, and then their own human shortcomings fall into the story, and off they go into these terrible directions. Could it be something like that?
I think the teachers implementing these programs in schools, many of them have no clue what they're doing. They're just told, from a top-down perspective, hey, you need to teach this. It's in law that we need to teach it. But very much, if you look back at sensitivity training, the military was doing this. And in fact, I found a 1974 document, I'm going to guess it's 74, it might be 76, where this psychologist at the CIA said we should not be doing this to our military members. The sensitivity training is likened to brainwashing in China's Mao's reign during the Cultural Revolution. Like he literally said,
it's interesting. This has been around for a while. I, in 7th grade, was subjected to sensitivity training by a local group of psychologists and clergy. And this one clergy that led the whole thing ended up getting a little trouble for sleeping with some of his female flock. Shocking, but that's always where these cult leaders go. And it isn't that interesting that this phenomenon, this idea, has been flying around for quite some time.
Yeah, Tavistock, the Institute for Social Research. I mean, this has been happening for quite a long time. And if you go all the way back, there is an actual New Age conspiracy. They've written about it in many books. You can read about it in Networking by Jessica Lipnack. They were working with people at NASA to connect across countries and states to figure out how to push this New Age, which is really New Thought and theosophical, really, if you want to go all the way back to the Eastern religions, to push this worldview upon the world.
So I'm going to ask you one more time, and I feel like I need some actionable or simple sort of frame. What does the average person do?
I think first off, we pressure our government to get out of the UN. But I think from a personal point of view, that sounds like a really big task, right? It's kind of overwhelming. And I tell people all the time, and actually it's interesting, you had Penelope on talking about Reagan. I end almost every single one of my presentations, I get asked to speak across the country with that quote from Reagan that says, freedom is no more than one generation away from extinction, and that we need to train our youth. Otherwise, we're going to tell our kids one day that, what it once was like to be in a nation that's free. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit there, but I think it starts at home. It starts with understanding how this cult ideology works, and then kind of inoculating your children against it. This whole collectivist mindset, you have to teach them that their freedoms, their rights, that does not mean they're responsible to the whole rest of the world, and they should not have to give up their rights and freedoms for someone else to feel good. And I think that teaching your kids to have that dividing line, it starts there. It starts at the dinner table.
Lisa, thank you so much for being here. Parents of Patriots is the YouTube channel. I am Lisa Logan on X. Anywhere else you'd like people to go?
Just my Substack Education Manifesto, and I think you covered the rest.
All right. Thanks, Lisa. Appreciate you being here. Thank you for your work.
Thank you so much for having me.
You got it. Interesting show today. Coming up, Susan's show tomorrow. I'm doing Gutfeld tomorrow, so I will not be in. Susan, you want to talk about that?
I'm going to talk to dead mobsters. So we have 2 psychics and 2 guests who are affiliated with the mob.
Interesting. People that we've seen on TV. Maybe television stars coming in. For me, look up at the calendar there. October.
Also it's at 12 o'clock Pacific, 3 p.m. East, or 11 o'clock Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern.
Yep.
An early time.
So it's a weird time. She's early and extra early. On the 8th, I'm seeing we have Sasha Latipova and Emily Kaplan, which could be a great combo. Sasha, as you know, is a brilliant scientist and had run industrial pharmaceutical factories, essentially. Emily is a great thinker. Broken Science, I hope I'm getting that right. I always get the name wrong, is the name of her organization. Then the next day, Alex Jones is going to stop by here. Robert Malone on the 10th. These are going to be a very interesting week. Chef Gruel coming by with the Raw Egg Nationalist. And then Dr. Scott Atlas coming in on the 16th. So there's a ton coming up. Emily Barsh is working hard on the schedule. Caleb, sorry about today's technical stuff. You know what it is? It's because we need to get a regular computer, not a laptop. That's our biggest problem.
Yeah.
And so we have to have these adapters to get everything hooked into the laptop. And all the cords are kind of loose.
That's what it looked like.
So the slightest...
It looked like, from a technical perspective, someone bumped it. So
no bumping, because we were just sitting here like we always do. But what came up on my screen was, parsec disconnected or cord disconnected. And I was like, uh-oh. And we were just sitting here. And so we need to have a regular computer, it seems to me, or do something about that adapter. So, Caleb, anything on your front?
Nope. Excited for your event next week when you're coming down to my town over in Alabama. And by then my voice will be back. So anyone who's hearing the show for the first time today, this is not how I normally sound.
So I will be in Alabama. We're going to Mobile, and it just so happens I'm giving a talk in Daphne, Alabama. So anybody in that region, please come see us. And Caleb lives right next door. So we're going to spend the day.
Yeah, but what is where? Where do we go if they want to come see you?
Daphne Civic Center.
Honestly, I haven't promoted the event yet because I know it's open to the public, but I don't know if they sold out tickets already or not, because they only had, I think, 400 or 500 tickets.
We can still tell them.
So it's at 7 p.m. at the Daphne Civic Center on
just
Tuesday of next week.
If you're in Alabama,
Dr. Drew in Mobile or wherever, Daphne.
Wait, let's do it. Now let's look it up.
We're going to have to post it somewhere, right? I didn't know we were supposed to do that. Nobody gave me any.
Yeah, I don't. That's the thing is, I don't know if we're supposed to promote it because
let's do it. Here we go. Yeah. It's the Baldwin County Drug Court. It's a fundraiser in Daphne, so it'd be expected to step up. We're going to be supporting a number of different causes there locally. Of course, they have an opioid problem, a fentanyl problem, the same problem that every community has. Yeah. But they've been very proactive there in Baldwin County and inviting people to come in and speak on this issue. Drug overdoses in Baldwin County are a leading cause of unnatural death. And Fentanyl Prevention Awareness Day was in August. More than 200 people die every day of overdose related to synthetic opioids. So there it is. Yeah, we're looking at the Gulf Coast Media. You can show up and be a part of it if you want. If you're down in the southern Alabama, we will be there and look forward to meeting everybody. We appreciate you. Yeah, thank you, Eamon Pass. The laptop is difficult to work with. We're on the road.
I know. I think it's time to get a PC in New York.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's time.
I completely agree. Caleb had recommended that yesterday.
Find one for me and ship it, convinced. Caleb. And then also, I'm going to turn this guy off and let him rest overnight. So
the laptop. Yeah. Okay, so being here at 11 o'clock tomorrow or 2 o'clock Eastern for Susan's show with a couple. Can we say who they're from?
Yeah, you can.
Mob Wives. For Mob Wives. You can see. We won't say exactly who yet, but it'll be a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to it. You should too. And then we are away while we're traveling to Alabama and whatnot. I think that following Thursday we're not going to do because Caleb has to get a new pediatrician. And we will start up again.
Wait, and we do have a show that day. I have Shane Cashman coming in. He's going to meet two psychics. That should be fun. I don't know if anybody's a fan of his, but
that is Susan's show next. I'm sorry.
So it's me.
That is October 3rd.
Yes.
And then I'll be back on the 8th for our usual schedule.
Maybe I'll bring Drew on too. He can get a psychic reading and talk to his mother who turned off the lights and the computer.
So with that, thank you. We'll see you guys tomorrow at 11 or 2 if you're Eastern time. Thank you, as Adam says, and mahalo. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.